Okay, so we're diving into ENS today, Ethereum Name Service. You send over a bunch of really interesting stuff about it, articles, news, even some deeper dives into AI.
Yeah.
It seems like you're really trying to get the full picture here.
Yeah, definitely trying to figure out what's going on with this whole ENS thing. There's the Coinbase and PayPal news, and then those predictions about where this is all going.
Yeah, we've got a lot to cover.
Definitely.
So for those who are maybe just hearing about this for the first time, can you give us like a quick breakdown? What is ENS and why should we care?
Yeah, so basically ENS is a naming system,
Yeah.
but for the decentralized web, like it takes all those crazy long addresses that we see with blockchain and replaces them with .eth names. So instead of sending your crypto to a string of random characters, you can send it to something like username.eth.
So it's kind of like the internet's phone book?
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it.
Hmm.
It's all about making things easier, more intuitive for users.
And I was reading that it's not just for sending crypto. Like you can use it for other things too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's way more than just sending and receiving crypto. We're talking accessing content, managing digital identities, even owning websites. And it's all through these easy-to-remember names.
That's wild. Okay, so we've got convenience, but then one of the other things that jumped out at me was the security aspect. I feel like we've all been there just staring at a long string of characters, like triple checking to make sure we don't send our crypto to the wrong place.
Oh, tell me about it. One tiny typo can be a huge headache.
Right.
ENS totally eliminates that risk. And because it's built on the blockchain, you get those inherent security benefits. Decentralization, transparency, immutability.
So no single entity is in control.
Exactly. Which is huge when you think about censorship or data breaches. With ENS, you're in control of your own digital identity and assets.
You hold the keys.
You hold the keys. It's all about putting the power back in the hands of the users.
I like it. And that brings us to some of the more recent news with Coinbase and PayPal integrating ENS into their platforms. That feels like a pretty big deal, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
It's pretty huge when you think about it. Like, it's not just about making things easier for people who already use crypto. This feels bigger, right?
Yeah, it really does. I think with Coinbase and PayPal, especially getting on board with ENS, it's a signal to everyone else that they're taking this whole blockchain thing seriously.
Yeah, they're putting their money where their mouth is, right?
Exactly. It's not just talk anymore.
Yeah.
And they clearly see the potential for this to go mainstream.
It's like that line from the 99 Bitcoins article. Something like, your grandma is far more likely to send, $50 to littlejohnny.f than she is to that long string of characters.
Totally. And that's what it's all about, making this less scary for the average person.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that quote? It's like, the biggest barrier to cryptocurrency adoption has been that it's too complex. They're trying to break that barrier down.
It reminds me of when the internet was first becoming a thing. Like, people were hesitant at first.
Oh, yeah.
But once it became easier to use, it just blew up. You didn't have to be a computer whiz to send an email anymore.
Exactly. And that's what's so exciting about all of this. We could be on the verge of something really big.
Mm-hmm.
ENS is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's a pretty important one.
For sure. And it makes you wonder, right? Like, what happens if this does go mainstream? What happens to the value of the ENS token itself?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's all about supply and demand. If more people start using ENS, the demand for the token goes up, and theoretically, the price should follow.
Makes sense. But ENS is about so much more than just payments, right? And that's where things get really interesting. Like, you had that article from Blaze Media about like a digital god and UBI. It was a pretty wild ride.
Yeah, it definitely gets you thinking. Those are some big concepts for sure. But I think it speaks to the potential impact of all of this idea of a digital god. It's really just about how technology is changing everything.
And how much power it has.
Exactly. And UBI in this context, it's not about the government handing out money. It's about individuals having control over their own data and digital assets.
Which is where ENS comes in.
Exactly. Because if you have a secure way to manage your digital identity, you're in a much better position to actually participate in this new economy.
So we're not just talking about the here and now. This is about the future.
Absolutely. ENS is laying the groundwork for a more decentralized internet.
Okay, so we've talked about payments, but what about those other use cases you mentioned? Like accessing content, managing digital identities, even owning websites. Can you walk us through those a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. And this is where I think it starts to get really exciting. Because we're moving beyond just convenience and security into this realm of empowerment. Like, imagine a future where instead of having a million different logins for every website, you just have your .eth name.
Wait, so instead of having my Facebook login, my Google login, my Twitter login, I could just have like my .eth name and that's it?
Exactly. It's like a digital passport that lets you seamlessly navigate the entire decentralized web. And because it's built on the blockchain, it's way more secure than those old login systems.
So everything tied to one name, kind of like that super thing project, right? With the subdomains.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're using ENS in a really creative way,
Yeah.
building a community around their art, giving members unique ways to participate. It's glimpse into how brands might use this stuff in the future.
It's like that example you gave, like Nike could give each customer a subdomain under their main ENS name.
Exactly. Like imagine having your own little corner of the Nike world just by having that subdomain. It could change everything about how we think about loyalty programs and personalized experiences.
Okay, so that's the big picture stuff. But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. What about someone listening to this right now? What's the takeaway for them? Why should they care about ENS today?
Because this is still the early days.
Yeah.
And those who get in early often stand to benefit the most. Think about the early days of the internet. Those who recognized the value of a good domain name. They were in a good position as things started to grow. And ENS could be even bigger. It's not just about websites. It's about digital identity. It's about ownership in this new digital world.
So it's less about the here and now and more about positioning yourself for the future.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the potential impact of this technology, even if we're still figuring out exactly what that looks like. But it's not without its risks, of course.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, security is great. But what happens if you lose your .eth name? Unlike those traditional accounts where you have recovery options, if you lose your private key for your ENS name, you're out of luck.
Oh, wow. That's a good point. It's not like you can just click forgot password.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the privacy aspect. Your transaction history on the blockchain is public, which is great for transparency, but it also means anyone can see where you're sending money or what digital assets you own.
So even if your real-world identity isn't tied to your ENS name, all your on-chain activity is still out there.
Exactly. It's something to think about for sure.
It definitely raises some interesting questions about the future of privacy.
It does. And I think that's what makes all of this so fascinating. We're not just talking about a new piece of tech. We're talking about a whole new way of interacting with the digital world.
It's a whole new frontier.
It's exactly.
Well, on that note, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just this. Stay curious. Keep asking questions and don't be afraid to explore. We're all figuring this out together.
I like it. Well, that's it for this deep dive into ENS. Big thanks to our expert for breaking it all down for us.
Happy to be here.
And to everyone listening, be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the articles we talked about. And until next time, happy exploring.